We are now live.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at our 4th annual Dividing Line Symposium. I'm Emily Cook, the Associate Director for the Afro-Amerindian Research and Cultural Center, and this is our 3rd event and final event of this year's symposium. So if you didn't get a chance to see our other virtual discussions, you can check those out on our website at aarccenter.org. Our mission at ARC is a nonprofit organization, and through our Dividing Line Symposium is to center African American, Native American, and Afro-Indigenous research topics and perspectives, and the intersections of cultures and generations through an interdisciplinary lens. So I would like to welcome and introduce our guests and filmmakers today, Frederick Murphy and Kimberly Knight. Thank you both so much for being here today. And we will discuss their current film project, Duality, a collection of Afro-Indigenous perspectives. And it's great to have you both back for another discussion with ARC. So to begin, I'll introduce Frederick Murphy. Frederick Murphy is the founder of History Before Us, LLC, a project centered on capturing, preserving, and advocating for influential history. He was raised in Clarksville, Tennessee, and is a graduate of Tennessee State University. His first film, the award-winning The American South as We Know It, explores the lives of survivors of Jim Crow, the courageous individuals who didn't make the headlines. His second documentary, The Other Side of the Coin, Race, Generations, and Reconciliation, was released on September 2nd, 2020. A collection of experiences and thoughts addressing the complexities of race in America, the film asks, how do we reconcile for the sake of future generations and humanity? Murphy's third installment, Sweet Home Alabama, A Chief and His Protege, was recently released in winter of 2021. Murphy has also directed educational films in in collaboration with the NC Rice Festival, Black Indians North Carolina, Saving Slave Houses, A1 Day One Productions, Brunswick Arts Council, and more. Frederick is a licensed clinical mental health counselor who finds joy in helping people achieve and retain an optimum level of functioning by focusing on their holistic health. With a master's degree in transformative leadership, and serves on the board of the James K. Polk Historic Site in Pineville, North Carolina, the Slave Dwelling Project in Charleston, South Carolina, and the Tennessee African American History Research Group located in Clarksville, Tennessee. So welcome. And on to Kimberly Knight. Kimberly Knight is originally from Eastern North Carolina and identifies as Afro-Indigenous. She graduated with a Master of Social Work degree from North Carolina Central University in May 2020. She is a 2020 North Carolina Central University 40 under 40 honoree. She obtains her licensed clinical social worker associate licensure and became a certified complicated grief treatment facilitator from Columbia University School of Social Work to serve as a therapist. She is the founder and editor of the Locks blog NC. She is the co-founder of HIV Cure Research Day for the state of North Carolina and co-founder of the National Black HIV and AIDS Awareness Day for Wilson, North Carolina. Currently, she's a member of the Western Wake alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, Triangle Native American Society, National Association of Social Workers, North Carolina Membership Committee, and Junior League of Raleigh. She is the founder of the nonprofit organization Black Indians NC and hosted the first powwow in North Carolina focused on African American and Native American people. She serves as a community advisor member for the North Carolina Central University Native American and Indigenous Student Association. She serves as a support facilitator for the North Carolina Commission of Indian Affairs and Halawa-Saponi Tribe Monthly Healing Circles. Currently, she is the co-director and co-producer of the upcoming documentary Duality, a collection of Afro-Indigenous perspectives, and interim editor-in-chief of Substantial Magazine, which leads us directly into the film we're going to talk about. So welcome again, both of you. Thank you so much. You have very busy lives and are putting wonderful work into the world. So thanks for being here with us tonight. We'll just start. We can start with either of you who'd like to open up. What led you to work on this film project, Duality? And also, what brought you two together? What's the connection between the two of you?
I can start. Well, it's a fun connection. I don't know if Frederick wanted to elaborate, but this conference right here is where we connected, dividing lines and getting to know Stephen and all those that were involved in the conference. And we served on a panel together and stayed connected afterwards and realized that we had some ancestry that was from different parts of Eastern North Carolina, specifically Warren County area, that had relatives connected to it. And we were like, wait, we actually have some connection there as family. And then we had never known each other prior to this panel. So it literally started here with dividing lines, and we stayed connected and decided to talk more in depth about Native American and African American folks in North Carolina. And as we got into these conversations, there came the opportunity to look into a film, because Frederick was telling me about his film work that he was doing. And so I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And then we started this journey almost 2 years ago of looking into how to develop a film, a documentary to come about this. So I'm excited to be here tonight. And it's really fun that it's like full circle coming back here 2 years later. So yeah, and I'll let him elaborate some more. Oh, and about me for the purpose of the film, being that I grew up in a Black and Native family household, it was really important to me about visibility and representation. So I really wanted to make sure that there was some early, more present date things documented about Black and Native people. So yeah.
Yeah, so just to kind of piggyback off of what Kim stated, and we were talking earlier about how it snowed there, so Kim wasn't able to make it. But it was just a phenomenal symposium, and I was already looking at another project to start working on, and so when I was able to hear some of the wonderful speakers that you all have, um, and Ty Wilson, who also was involved in that one. He's also involved in this project. I reached out to Ty and said, hey, this is an idea that I have. And then that led that led us to Kimberly and me reaching out to her after we talked about those connections in which she talked about in those specific areas in North Carolina. And it just kind of blossomed from there. We started the conversation shortly after this symposium, and then we started filming in November of 2020. So November of the same year, we jumped on it pretty quickly there in Orange County, North Carolina. And then it was a little bit prior to that when Kim and I started asking each other about, where our ancestors were at. Then we compared DNA numbers, and boom, there was a match, and surnames started matching, and things kind of turned into what they've turned into since then. So the ancestors have a way of guiding you to where you're supposed to be, and that's how it came about. And we're just very happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity, and look forward to having a good, fruitful conversation tonight.
That's wonderful. It is full circle. So tell us a little bit about your film. We do have a clip we want to show, but you could start maybe by telling us a little bit about the film and your exploration of duality.
So what viewers can expect to see tonight is a teaser that we filmed back in 2020, in fall 2020. And this teaser features local community members and people that we were really excited about connecting with. And many of them are enrolled in their tribal communities of Ohio Saponi, as well as Okanichi Band of Saponi. So you're going to get to see a variety of people that are going to be a part of this. So I don't want to take too much away from it because it is a teaser, but the research of learning just about people, not only across our state of North Carolina, but nationwide, was very important.
All right, well, go ahead and show that teaser, and then I'm sure you all can expand from there on what we're seeing.
So to be Afro-Indigenous to me is the burden or the honor, however you look at it. I'd say I look at it as a little of both, of telling 3 stories.
I'm very proud of being Native and of being Black, because I feel as though we are two of the most predominant creators in the world.
For the entirety of the time that my ancestors have lived in this country, my African and my Indigenous ancestors have lived in this country in contact with Western culture, it has tried to destroy them.
Walter Pleckler was like the father of eugenics. And right around the 1900s, 1920s, he was reclassifying Native Americans as colored. If the census people came and they found out you were Indian, they would take you out back and shoot you in the head.
I think that's a lot of the reason why we struggle with anti-Blackness is because we were reclassified as Black. And a lot of people in the community felt like they had to detach from being Black because they were seeking recognition from the colonial settler state.
As a Native American person and coming from a mother who looks like this, not only was I like often ostracized by people just in the world, but it felt especially intentional when it was my own family members doing the attacking.
Our invisibility, our suffering, our generational trauma exists today.
One of the biggest contributors to the erasure of Afro-Indigenous people is that so many people are in love with this fake Hollywood idea of what an Indian has to look like. And that drives them to tell people who look different, who challenge that, to say, you're not real, you're not authentic, you don't count, etc.
To those who do not see me as Indian looking, I say, what does an Indian look like? Because we are such a multitude of colors, shapes, sizes, eye colors, hair textures. We are a variety of people.
I can't imagine what it is like to try to survive all of the traumas of war, of genocide, of slavery, of disease, of depopulation, and to still wake up the next day and decide that you are going to love your children so much that you are not going to let this be their story, and you are going to make something different. And to have to do that again and again and again, generation after generation, until I am here, that is what resilience is.
It's powerful.
So that, yeah. So I was telling Kimberly early, because we've seen this trailer obviously 1,000 times. I was telling her, I can't wait till we are able to update it, which we will be updating most likely in the middle of March. We start filming again next week. So on the 5th and 6th, we're going to be filming again. But so essentially with this, we wanted to discuss the various different connections that both cultures face, both races, if you will. Use quotation marks with race because we know that that's more of a construct than anything, but just for the sake of conversation, what both races have faced. And to be a truth teller in it, we talk about trauma, historical trauma. Both groups have suffered such in various different ways. When we talk about reclassification, that obviously is something that depersonalizes somebody and does not allow them the opportunity to function in their true self, right? It forces you to choose. It takes away your autonomy, right? So we discuss those things in that specific part. And then just, like it was said, this Hollywood image of what an Indian is supposed to look like, right? And with that being said, there are often a lot of cases in which individuals, of course, who are of darker hue, aren't necessarily or are intentionally kept out of various different tribal spaces and places simply because they are of a darker hue, which is definitely unfortunate. So we wanted to cover a variety of things. We also obviously can't have this story without identifying all of the resilience that runs through our bloods. And that's just super duper important for us to do. So we're trying to make this film as comprehensive as possible with some of the topics that are discussed. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to add to what Frederick was saying, I think the visual piece is just showing the diversity of Afro-Indigenous people, just that there's not this one staple look for you to look like, and just showing people present day, because a lot of documentaries and books that I've come to love over the years have been from like the 80s or 90s. And so now it's wonderful to see more present day people who identify as Afro-Indigenous and what their thought processes are. And also people can expect to see, you know, other people being interviewed who do not identify as Afro-Indigenous, but can give real context to the story. So excited for it.
So as individuals and even as co-directors, producers, what have been your influences as a filmmaker in this process, and kind of that process and what it's looked like for you?
I'll let Frederick go first. He's the very seasoned filmmaker. I'm the newbie.
You know, it's just being able to help somebody's experience be amplified. And you know, and that can take a toll on a filmmaker, especially if your project's not fully funded, so you're utilizing your own funds. But when you see how important these lived experiences are, and I try to get away from stories, because I mean, a story, I just don't think it's as impactful as saying and verbalizing someone's lived experience, right? Like that puts humanity with it. I'm not saying that saying story doesn't, and I know that that's like the overarching way of communicating what it is that you may be presenting. But I think that just being able to help someone who does not necessarily have the critical acclaim that some other individuals in this space may have, give them a voice and see how influential they have been in their own community is just very powerful, and it's very influential, and it's very motivating to help them throughout that process, but more importantly, to learn for yourself about these specific topics, right? Like this is not a topic that I was just 100%, you know, competent in. It took me coming to you all Symposium. It took me going back and looking at some of my family memoirs that were left of an Indigenous ancestor for me to want to learn a little bit more, and just connect with people like Kim, connect with other people, some that you've had on your panel, to learn more about this, so I can be as supportive as possible in doing just that, you know, sharing these lived experiences. So for me, that's kind of what motivates me in doing this, whether it's speaking of African American history, Gullah Geechee history, work with that, Civil War, you know, the Clotilda, like all these different projects, they're all very impactful and very powerful.
Yes, thank you for sharing that, Frederick. And for me, it definitely, my muse has just has been my beloved late mother. I think about just, there was so much about her family history she wanted to know and did not get an opportunity to get as in depth as she wanted to. She was definitely on track, but just not as far along as I think she wanted to go. And so I think that she's been a beautiful muse to me when it comes to this film, because it gives a lot of insight about things that she's always wanted to know about her family history. It was more clearly identified from my father's family, but it wasn't as clearly identified from my mother's. And so it was a lot of things that were barriers that kept them from learning about their history when it came to their Indigenous side. So I think this film, really the process of, you know, creating this has been, my mother has definitely been my muse for that. Yeah.
So Kimberly, this might be kind of in part what you were just talking about with family and history there. What does the exploration of duality look like for you all as individuals around this topic?
For me, it's one of those things where, yes, the connection of family and like it makes it really interesting because Frederick and I are related. So it really ties this whole story, this whole lived experience. I like his term lived experience, lived experience and of so many various people of Afro-Indigenous culture, because I really did grow up feeling very isolated. Like there wasn't many people saying those terms or identifying that way. They may use the term Black Indian more so than Afro-Indigenous as people do now, more present day, but it's made this whole process of this of approaching my family history and genealogy. All of this has been inspiration for when it comes to the film. And it also allows us to research people who are doing the work that comes with this film. So scholars, historians, genealogy societies, participants, and different people who are being cast into the film. It gave us an opportunity to really explore like, wow, there's a whole open area out here. And I will say with the pandemic, it gave us a little time to be able to really research people because more people were vocal online when it came to identifying themselves. And so it made it a little bit easier with trying to find people. Mhm.
Yeah, and you know, just what Kim said, the pandemic allowed a lot of you know, it's unfortunate that it had to come on the heels of a pandemic for, you know, you to take a deeper dive into the research. But you know, I think for myself personally, I was well versed on the people in my family from African descent and also European descent. You know, I am a product of a Confederate soldier who I am very well versed on his family. I speak to individuals in his family, which is obviously my family as well. And, you know, I was well versed on that. But during that time period, during the pandemic, it allowed me the opportunity to go back through some of my old family memoirs that were left by grandmothers. And the mention of being indigenous was in a couple of those and some of the customs that they would utilize, such as cherry bark, sassafras roots, right? They're bringing up these different things that the Black side of my family would look at as maybe root work or something like that, right? Like these are the different cultures, but for that specific ancestor, that was the norm. So kind of dusting off some of that paperwork and delving deep into just trying to learn more about that culture. I'm not in a mode where I'm trying to enroll in any tribe or anything like that. I just want to learn more about the culture that was stripped from my indigenous ancestor, who was also unfortunately enslaved, Isabella Jones. So, and that's her name, and you know, I have pictures of her and the memoir and artifacts of hers, and very proud to have those things passed down via her grandchild, who unfortunately passed a couple of years ago, my aunt Kate Talley. So those are things that really help motivate me to stay focused and to learn more about that aspect of my family history, because oftentimes, you know, it gets pushed to the side, especially when you're very knowledgeable on one side, and then you start having the ability to learn the various different ways of researching that type of history, like going through the roles and identifying the location geographically where your ancestors were at that time, looking at surnames, family papers, and various different blogs and Facebook groups that are out there, GEDmatch groups that are out there, and you're seeing that you're matching up with all these things and surnames are crossing, and you're like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense now, right? So that has been very, very powerful for me. And I'm just very appreciative of not being wasteful with the time that we had, the quote unquote downtime that we had.
So it sounds like in some regard, you were exploring some of your own family histories or diving deeper than you already were in your own family histories during this process. So maybe even before the film, what was that process like for you if you were involved in that genealogical research and preservation in your family?
Yeah, for me, like I said, my mother's family history with more family members wanting to know more information, I really started to talked to family members that had started the process, but had not gotten to a certain extent. They had maybe gotten to like the early 1900s, which is still awesome. So I definitely want people to understand, however far you've gotten, every step is a celebration of a win. But I said, well, let's see how far back we can go. And then I started looking at the different matriarch lines. And that's when I started my research on my maternal grandmother's side. And then on, which was my mother's mother, her side of the family. Then I also went on to my mother's father's mother's family, because I noticed no one had really researched his grandmother or his mother too much. So I said, well, let me just go over here where I see a lot of people are not familiar with as many names. And that's what led to a lot of information about Indigenous folks in the family. It also led to a lot of amazing free people of color and African people that were there. So it's just, and also that were also African and European, specifically English from Essex, England. I was able to get back to 1604 for one line of my grandparents' family. And I'm still working, it's still a work in progress, but it also helps with the film because you're along the way, you get to meet historians and you get to meet people who know about the areas your family is from. So it all kind of comes together, and the tips and things that they give you, like knowing which websites to take a look at or knowing which types of information to study, like, oh, make sure you talk to your elders in your family, or look into the birth, death, and life, birth, death, and marriage certificates of your family members. And I remember one historian told me, you look at where a person was born, where they married, where they had children, and where they died. And that will lead you on your way. And ever since I've heard that, that's stuck with me for years now. And I've been going just like that on that trail. So yeah.
Yeah, and I took that advice from Kim as well, and I've been blessed to, even within the past 3 weeks, I was able to go to Williamsburg, Virginia. I have a branch of family, Pettis family, that were there, as well as Ferguson family that were in that area. So being able to go to ground zero at the site where those individuals were enslaved was very, very important. As well as being able to find some of my family members on the different roles, Indigenous roles, Native roles. Now their applications were rejected, but at least with the memoir, I'm able to, pair these things that it wasn't just something that was just being said. There was also an application that was filled out as well, right, to affirm their indigeneity. So it's been great, being able to go to multiple different levels that you may not have been able to go before with research, by actually taking the time and collaborating with people. Kim and I have had multiple different Zoom sessions where we're sharing screens and identifying our shared ancestor, trying to figure out, like, where did the split happen, right? Because obviously that is something that happened. Most of my family were in North Carolina, but we ended up in Middle Tennessee. And so, with one branch, I know exactly how they ended up in Middle Tennessee, and the other branch, still trying to figure that out, right? And then some obviously stayed in North Carolina and Virginia. So, it's fun. I tell people all the time that when I get old and gray, and I have some, y'all may not be able to see it, but I do have some gray. And if I had hair, then I'd probably have a full set of gray. But this is going to be my crossword puzzle, right? I'm gonna be on the porch with a laptop doing genealogy instead of doing crossword puzzles. So in Sudoku, I think that's what it's called. That's what my grandmother does. So it's just a joy to do this family research and create a full depiction of who it is that you see in the mirror, based on past ancestors.
So I want to go back to the film in a minute, but I do want to touch on something kind of related to something, Frederick, you said, which is looking through the roles. And I do a lot of that as well in my own family genealogical research. And so when you come across someone and we know that this has happened so much in history. So with the Afro-Indigenous peoples being rejected, for their applications being rejected, and the reason, you know, you see so many times rejected because they don't use the words because this person was enslaved, because so-and-so was a slave. So what are your thoughts on that and those lost, not even lost, those suppressed, untold, you know, histories, but also the things that we do have documentation of, and the impact that that has on people who are looking to trace, you know, their histories and their families' roots, and then also be able to identify as who they truly are?
I think it speaks to the power of colonization. I think it speaks to the power of assimilation, you know, and we can't say that every single Native group did such, right? But I mean, not every person, right? But I think it speaks to what the stronghold of colonization did to this country. The federal government, you know, also putting these things in play, or providing a roadmap, right, for individuals to create these types of elements of proof of who you are, right? So I think for some people it can be completely devastating. Um, for me, definitely it was a bummer. You know, I sent the paperwork to Kim. I'm like, yo, check this out, right? And she was like, yeah, it happened. And I'm like, dang, you know, it's kind of messed up. But you know, I've gotten to a space now at 42 years old and researching for over 20 years that I don't need any type of paper to confirm who my ancestors were. You know, my family is very connected today. We still have family reunions, and we're all very prideful of our ancestors and the people that are still living today, sharing their stories. So for people that are out there now doing the research and seeing these types of things, because there's such a heightened sense or heightened interest of doing genealogy research, you know, you're the person that determines the self-worth of your ancestor, and you're the person that embodies what they mean, right? And I think as long as you stay focused on that, then you'll be okay. But it is disappointing, you know, that you see people who tried to embrace both of their ancestral ties, but you know, at this point, what can we do?
Yeah, and speaking with the rejected applications, I know that when I started researching my mother's family, my fourth great grandparents, they were in a community which was a Black and Indigenous community area, still is predominantly Black and Native people you'll find in these two counties of North Carolina, Nash and Halifax County. It's in Eastern North Carolina. And the interesting part about it was there were 400 people in that community at the time that applied for membership and to be enrolled into the Eastern Band of Cherokee, as we know it as now. And so with the 400 people were rejected, except one. I think one or two were allowed to have enrollment, but everyone else was rejected, including my great grandparents. And it was, you know, this big community of people who were like, we know we're Native, we know we're Indigenous, but because of federal regulation at that time, it was thinking, oh, well, we'll enroll into this tribe, not thinking about the traditions of the tribes that were in their area and looking into that. And so I think because of the association of support and federal support that was supposed to happen at that time, because this, you're talking about the late 1800s when this occurred, is that you had a community of people who was on the opposite side of the state saying, we have a connection still here because there were some people of this ancestry over here in this part of the state at a certain time. So I think it was really interesting to read that. I still have the letters of their rejection and the submission letters of how they wrote out so vividly and colorfully how they were connected as a community, and just reading those types of letters. And a lot of those people that are ancestors of people who are now enrolled in either the Meherrin Indian Nation or Hallawasaponi tribe. And so just looking at how those connections are threaded together, it was really, really interesting. So yeah, those things were very telling when you think about that. And then when you think about reclassification, a talk I did earlier today about critical race theory and just about, we're looking at the criticisms against people of diverse backgrounds. We were talking about specifically reclassification with Walter Plecker. And my presentation was about from Indian to mulatto and how that affected Southeast woodland natives. And all of that being said is where you look at the dynamics of one individual who was really, really sorely core on focusing on doing acts of white supremacy to oppress a people, to be reclassified to even oppress them more. It is really truly where we have to look at these historical accounts of how census enumerators were reclassifying people and just say, oh, well, I don't think you're white and I don't think you're Negro, so I'm just going to put you in this middle, but it doesn't matter what the middle is. It's just, this is the middle term. And that was the issue. And that's why now I encourage people when the census comes around, identify yourself and reclaim your heritage and reclaim who you are, because one day someone's going to be researching you. So yeah, it's very important.
Such good points. Yes, thank you both for elaborating. So I'll kind of switch back to the film right now. Where all did you travel, and what groups of people or individuals did you primarily talk to in your research and throughout this documentary process?
So as far as traveling, we did some local filming in Orange County, Kim had mentioned there, with some individuals, the Okanichi tribe in Saponi, Ohio, Saponi, correct, Kim? Yeah. And then also to Tennessee, we went to Franklin, Tennessee, the historic Franklin Masonic Hall, which is where the Indian Removal Act 1830 was signed, where the Chickasaw leaders met with Andrew Jackson. Now, one thing, like I was mentioning earlier, that a lot of people think that Andrew Jackson signed that document, but he did not sign that document. But he was the only sitting president that actually attended the signing of a treaty, because he wanted that space for land speculation so bad. And he accomplished it, of course. So, you have that aspect of it, and that we did that in Franklin, Tennessee. And in that same trip, we went to my stomping grounds there in Montgomery County at Port Royal, and that was the start of the Trail of Tears in that specific area. So there we were able to talk with David Britton, who was the park ranger there, excellent historian. And at Franklin, we were able to talk to Rachel Finch, who's a great friend of mine. And what we wanted to highlight on the Trail of Tears was the fact that there were Black folks that were also there, right? We know that the 5 civilized tribes did enslave Africans, and also not only enslaved them, but there were also some, some families that have just both, right? Like there were consensual families that were there as well. And I think that that's just not represented often when we talk about the Trail of Tears, is how those family units travel together, whether it was a situation where the person of African descent was enslaved, or if it was a consensual relationship between the two, because we do know that there were unity amongst these two races as well, so we wanted to make sure that we highlighted that, specifically talking about Oklahoma, right? Like Oklahoma has the most still historically Black town settlements. And how do you think all these Black folks got to Oklahoma, right? So, that's something that we wanted to make sure that we covered. We'll be in Durham, RDU area this next weekend coming up. We have some people flying in from Oklahoma, but we will also be traveling to Oklahoma, and we're also have Florida on our radar, and Louisiana. So, a lot of this is based on funding, of course, which we've been blessed to get a couple of grants, but we also have been paying out of pocket, myself, Kim, and Ty. And so we're looking for funding, and donations. So we'll Kim, Black Indians NC will be a 501 here pretty soon. So if anybody wants to help contribute to this, please do. We'd appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. I amplify that with what Frederick says. We thank you for your support you've already done, and that's what's coming. So, and we also got an opportunity to do a small shoot at my alma mater, North Carolina Central University. So just want to shout out, thanks to the NCCU Diversity Inclusion Office, because they are the first HBCU, historically Black college and university in our state of North Carolina, to have a Native American association on their campus for students to join. And it was student created and led. And then they reached out to me and told me that I could be a community leader. They would like for that. And I was like, wow, why wasn't this here when I was on campus? Like, but you know how it is. Once you graduate, all the good stuff happens, right? So, but yes, we had that opportunity to film there, and we have a shoot coming up this month in March, and very excited just about the future travels to come with it, and just learning about the people, the culture of the towns, and the elders that we meet, and just different people that we run across, and also good food. So that's been a perk for going to that.
And I don't think I've asked this, but what is the release date for the film, or the expected release date? Yeah, for the Duality film.
Yeah, we're hoping that we can get it released in November. It just really depends on these upcoming shoots and when we can get to Oklahoma funding as well. You know, we really want to take our time with this one, because we don't want to have a slanted perspective of just folks from North Carolina, right, or from the Carolinas in general, which is why we're flying people in from Oklahoma, because we weren't able to make it this go around to be there physically. But later on we will, because we're expecting some things to come through. But you know, it really just depends on, there's a lot of different factors in which it's going to depend on, but the goal is November. It's to have it released is in November.
Do you have a platform that we can look out for the film in November, or just your social media sites, your websites?
So as it relates to the release, we're going to really hit pretty hard museums, schools, right? So we'll do that circuit, film festivals, and then kind of see, you know, build a buzz, and hopefully going into tribal communities as well, to build a buzz, to also utilize the people that are in the film to be a Q&A, to be able to go even more in depth about their experiences and their desired outcomes as it relates to being a perfect person of African and Indigenous descent. And so that's kind of like the circuit. And then, you know, if things work out, which knock on wood that they will, you know, hopefully try to pitch it to, you know, a PBS or, you know, larger platforms to be able to, you know, really push this as wide, throw this net as wide as possible. So, but definitely starting out on doing those type of face-to-face screenings, and then seeing where that leads us. And then, you know, probably Vimeo, perhaps Amazon and things like that.
So just to kind of give the audience or others an idea of some of the other projects that you've worked on, because I know many of these projects are connected to what you're doing now, and your own research and all of that. So I want to ask if there's anything you'd like to highlight that you have worked on in the past, or that you're also currently working on outside of the film that we can learn from.
Yeah, so with Black Indians NC, we're a nonprofit organization in North Carolina, and we are in the process of receiving our 501c3 status, so please stay tuned for that, and launching our new website. So I'm excited about that as well. We're going to have a nice launch for that. But Black Indians NC plans on hosting a symposium September 24th this year. So we had a virtual powwow last year, and it was a success. And again, thank you to all of you that may have viewed it or has been sharing it. Thank you so much. Lots of support. But this year I'm going to see if we can be in person. It's still not for sure yet. We just have to see how things go when it comes to COVID-19 protocols and restrictions, but hopefully we can have a sense of gathering together, at least in a safe capacity. If not, it will be virtual and I'll let everyone know. But we're excited that next month for Women's History Month, I will be announcing our 2 scholarship recipients. And so they both are women. That's just a little tease there because I want to announce the names. But in honor of Women's History Month, announcing 2 women that submitted amazing essays and had wonderful references about their culture and background and how it supports their education, how that's been a part of their educational journey. So I'm excited about that update coming. And still working with the healing circles. So for those local in Eastern North Carolina, it will be March 10th and March 24th. They'll be in person at the Hallowasaponi Tribal Office. So you can definitely learn more information about them by looking online and following. But yeah, definitely follow me on Black Indians NC on Facebook and Instagram. That's where you can get tons of info about upcoming events and things that we'll be doing. So yeah.
Yeah, so I have a couple of projects going on. One is a self-titled project named Afriye, and that's after a woman who's a healer and a seer in Selma, Alabama, and she's doing great work as it relates to historical trauma healing in Selma, Alabama, as well as discussing some of her own traumas that she's experienced via domestic violence and rape and ancestral trauma as well. That she has going on. So that's a film that I'm working on. And currently I'm in Jonesboro, Tennessee, and Johnson City. They're right up the street from each other. Working on another film that's called Appalachian Soul. So we're discussing the African American influence in Appalachia. So working on that film, and I have a couple of ancestral projects with Joby Hill with Saving Slave Houses, where we're documenting various different interactions with families of the enslaved as well as enslavers, which is very powerful because we're seeing a sense of individual reconciliation that's happening in those spaces. It's just super duper powerful. And then a couple of other projects that I'm working on, and I can't really say much about, but hopefully here pretty soon I'll be able to do such. So yeah, that's what's going on.
And Frederick, your most recent film, where can we access that film?
Yeah, so the most recent film is titled Sweet Home Alabama, A Chief and His Protege. And that film, you can find it you can go to historybeforeus.com, which is my website, historybeforeus.com. And just a real quick synopsis is it discusses the life of a descendant of Chief Charlie Aluale, and his American name is Charlie Lewis. And he was an individual that was on the Clotilda, which was the last slave ship that came into the United States, documented. And I think in 2019 is when they discovered it, 2018, 2019, I can remember, down in Africatown, Mobile, Alabama. So I don't know if you all have seen it lately, but it's been everywhere. Sundance Festival, not my film. My film wasn't at Sundance Festival. I wish it was at Sundance Festival. But CNN, ABC, BBC, National Geographic, Discovery Channel, all these places have descended upon Africatown getting these stories. But I took it from an angle in which where I interviewed the descendant of a chief, and I paired together their resilience because she's a cancer survivor. And so with that, I put a twist on it as it relates to his journey and what it is that he was able to accomplish by starting a church, starting a school, et cetera, and then her surviving the fight with cancer and discussing environmental justice and things that's happening in that community, and her getting, I guess it would be kind of like a second chance in life, and she's not being wasteful with it at all. She's directed a play about her ancestors and people in that community. And so just very happy with the response from individuals who've seen the film. Been blessed to do some corporate screenings as well with that film. and Q&As with myself and Joycelyn Davis, and that's the descendant. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Pastor Derek Tucker, who is the pastor of First Union Baptist Church, and that's the church that her third great grandfather, Chief Charlie Aluwale, helped found. So that's the project, and it can be found at History Before Us. Yep, at historybeforeus.com.
Great, thank you both for that. I do want to leave some time for any audience questions. If any of our audience members have any questions, you can put that in the live chat on Facebook. And I do want to also mention, I know you both mentioned already, but at Black Indians NC on Instagram, I believe, right, and Facebook, and then
That's
at
right.
History Before Us. Okay. All right, I do. I guess I'll end with one question. Just kind of, what do you hope that people take from this film? Maybe some of the things you've learned yourself, or just what do you hope is the highlight of this upcoming film that the audience will take as far as lessons are concerned?
I guess what lessons from the film you were saying? I'm sorry. Yes. I hope it inspires people. I hope it inspires people to look into their own family history, to think about just honoring those ancestors. I like that earlier Frederick said about, you're the one that's self-identified and giving self-value and self-worth to your family. And so I hope that this film really inspires people to really take pride in who your ancestors are. And I see sometimes so much about people feeling disappointment if they're not finding something they feel they should find in their genealogy or family history. But it's all a story or lived experience of her, I would say, is for people. So I want people to understand that this is all a part of the fabric of your DNA, fabric of your life. And so to honor that. So I hope this film inspires people to do that and to be active in your community. Have a service type of mindset about things, of being active and connecting with communities and things like that, and tracing your way home. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of the same sentiments, and I just I hope that it sparks curiosity for people. I think also if it can assist an individual to really take a deep dive and look at how colonization has negatively affected this specific entity as it relates to familial connections, race, culture, it's just affected so much. And the invisibility of folks that identify as Afro-Indigenous who are of darker hue, there needs to be some empathy that's there. People are trying to reconnect with, and it's a spiritual journey as well as it relates to reconnecting. So be empathetic and be patient with individuals who may have questions, that may be curious, and if possible, if you're more knowledgeable about it, then help guide. This is a battle that has been people have been fighting for so long, and there's a lot of people that have been advocates to make sure that there's a safe space such as this symposium for individuals who are seeking to know more, to where they can gain the competency and the empowerment that they need to keep pressing forward. So I just hope that it helps people consider humanity just a little bit more.
Yes, and it makes me think of just also, we talk about decolonization a lot, and so decolonizing our minds and what we think we know, and certainly that also includes filling our minds with history. We think the history we think we know is not always the real account or the full account. There was a question that came through. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find that question now. One audience member asked, how did you all start the genealogy process once you located a possible ancestor on the doll's roll?
So what the process is, mainly I tell people like you're looking for the main course certificates, right? Like we spoke about earlier, it's the birth, the marriage, and the death certificates you're looking for. But also you might come across papers of people might have had freedom papers. They might have papers that shown a bill of sale of them being enslaved. You might come across the Dawes rolls or the Guion Miller rolls, if specifically North Carolina, but you may come across that of 1924. You may come across different rolls for different tribal communities because based on which tribe that you're researching. But with researching that, because sometimes the names are electronically online now, you may not have to call directly to a tribal office, but a lot of times people do call the tribal offices and connect with whomever the genealogy or record keeper is at that specific tribal office just to verify. And then once verified, they may go through the process of researching more family history about that particular line in their family. So that is also one way that I know here in the state of North Carolina, a lot of people, when they start researching, but with the Dawes roll specifically, that's federal tribe. So that's Eastern Band Cherokee here in North Carolina. Yeah.
All right, thank you all. Thank you to our audience as well for joining us. I hope you check out the film and keep an eye out for it. Follow both Frederick and Kimberly on their websites and their social media. And again, just thank you for a wonderful Dividing Line Symposium, our 4th annual. And if you would like to learn more about ARC and our initiatives or to donate, you can visit our website at aarccenter.org. And our videos will be posted from the symposium as well. So thank you again. Thank you both so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone have a good evening.